Hello and welcome to the director's commentary of The Softening. I'm the writer and director, Simon Stockdale, and I'm excited to talk about my first ever feature film, The Softening, which of course I made alongside Elemental Productions, Logan and Mitch. They're great guys. It was a pleasure to work with them. Also, the cast being, Josephine and Devin, as well as everybody else. Just a pleasure to work with so many great people. So hopefully you guys enjoy this commentary. These were always my favorite things growing up. Kind of honestly preferred the behind the scenes stuff more than actually watching the movie. So hope this is going to be a little bit entertaining, a little bit informative, and a whole lot of fun for you guys. So this sound here that you're about to hear with Devin saying like, why don't you soften up your skin? That was actually the first thing we recorded for the movie. It's very rare in movies that you shoot anything chronological, and we certainly didn't for the most part, but this was the rare exception where the first thing we recorded actually was the first thing that happened. And then we filmed this. I like to think of myself as pretty lenient when it comes to how many takes we do of things, trying to cap it pretty low, but we did more takes of this shot than anything else in the movie by far. I'm pretty sure we were in the mid to high 20s with how many takes we did of just me rubbing lotion on my hands. My hands were very, not only soft, but moist after those takes were done. These shots here were just some great shots that Mitch got for us, setting up the camera, getting some B-roll around the house. He told me, I don't know what you're going to use this for, but you're going to use it because it looks good. And sure enough, it actually became a pretty important part of the story because I want to use it here at the beginning and then later at the end to kind of just show the whole, time is not linear in this movie. There's no continuity as far as how things are being told. So, great shots that I wouldn't have had otherwise. So many moments in storytelling and filmmaking is just figuring it out. You didn't always plan to do things certain ways, and you get some really good ideas during the post-production of it, honestly. You tell stories 3 times while filmmaking, and the writing process, and the filming process, and then lastly in the editing. So what makes it so interesting and, different than every other form of storytelling. We then filmed this. This was our first full day, the first shot of the first day. And for the most part, I kind of left the camera work up to Mitch. I trusted his eye and what he wanted to do. But there were certain shots that I was very set in my ways on what I wanted. And that was one of them where I was like, I need this shot this way. It's the first shot of the movie and I really need it to be this way. And so luckily, we have a good collaborative effort there where we may argue a little bit about what we each want, but we're going to listen to what each other wants and we're going to come to some sort of agreement. And so that was a good start to the day for us. It is funny, that scene, I have to point out. My acting in it is a bit over the top. I was channeling Jim Carrey a little bit there on purpose, but this was the first time anybody involved in this project had seen me acting, and I think I made him a little bit nervous, because they're like, oh no, what did we sign on to? This guy sucks, and he made himself the main character, but luckily we filmed a much more serious scene right after this, and think I won him back with that. So this house, by the way, Chadds Ford, PA, just a great location. I originally had written the script for a 2-story house, but after seeing that house and how the whole back wall essentially was glass, I was like, this is just the perfect house for a horror film, and I need to use it. So reworked the script, made it work in just a 1-story thing, and the basement. And I think it was a lot better that way. I thought it looked great. This little ATM thing was torn down a week after we filmed this. I still blame myself for it. I think they're like, what are they doing here? We should just get rid of it, bulldoze it. And so they did. That guy I bumped into, by the way, that's Eric Keith. Work with him on YouTube all the time. He does various reviews with me and stuff. Not much of an actor. He would tell you the same thing, but he wanted to be involved. I wanted him involved, so I gave him a little part. He's actually the same guy who just drove that car away as the other, parent in line. This day, this shot was kind of miserable to get, by the way, because we didn't realize this location was actually right next door to a firing range. So we had gunshots going off the entire shoot this day, and so we were trying to get our dialogue in between gunshots that were happening every like 2 to 5 seconds. So it'd be a lot of quick talking, and then pause, and then say some more stuff, and you have to try and do that but still make it sound normal. And so it was really, really difficult to get the dialogue done. It probably lasted twice as long as a normal shoot would because of that. But yeah, it honestly, you can't tell, and luckily that's, you know, that happens in the editing room where you figure that stuff out. You splice takes together and you know, put some high pass on some stuff and you work it out. So it ended up being okay, but man, it was a stressful day of to try to get that done. Yeah, I need to scout locations better in the future. But, you know, props to Lindsay and Young Mi, who played, you know, the clipboard girl and the principal here, because they were absolutely fantastic through the process, not losing their cool, working really hard, trying to get the best takes possible, and, you know, being absolute professionals and extremely patient with us in the situation. So shout out to them. They did a great job, made the scene great, made it work wonderfully.
Mr. Stockman, does Mrs. Stockman generally pick up the kids from school? Or perhaps someone else?
This sound effect too, that door chime, actually isn't there. We recorded that at a different house. We recorded that at the house we actually filmed for the basement, so that was fun to just splice that in because it matters to the plot. And they didn't have one in the house, so that's just a fun little thing that, like, you know, you find in editing. These kids were great, by the way. So much fun to work with kids. I know they say don't work with kids or animals on your films, and that's true generally. I understand why. But yeah, this kid in particular, he was so cute. He's adorable. I had a chance to check out the bloopers. He was just so much fun. Absolutely loved it. This shot here, by the way, was the first time I ever noticed a continuity error in my film. The jacket goes from unzipped to zipped in between shots. That sent me into about a week-long depression during the editing process that it took me a long time to work through by watching, you know, Oscar-winning movies with continuity errors and watching other movies that just, like, it happens in the best of movies. It's okay. Nobody noticed until you mentioned it. It's fine. Devin, by the way, absolutely fantastic. Loved working with her. I owe so much to her. She was the first person to sign on to this movie, and the movie would not have been the same without her. I was like, I just need to work with you. I don't care. Like, I offered her the role of Strange Woman and Rachel. Like, I was like, either one, you take it. I just want to work with you. And she picked Strange Woman because she's like, I want to do something a little, you know, different, a little creepy, a little fun. And she absolutely nails it. She's so good. I'm so glad I got to work with her. The ultimate professional. She helped so much. Helped me as a first-time director just feel confident in myself that, like, I can trust her to listen to me even if nobody else will. And, like, she believes in me, so I have to believe in myself too, because she knows what she's talking about. Filming at the Lanark Diner was just a wonderful opportunity for us. I try and fit in as many references to other films in this movie, for plot reasons, but also just for fun, where especially having those Philly references, whether it was, you know, the Lanark Diner, or the Magic Garden, or the references to Rocky, Silver Linings Playbook, all of those Philly references, that's something that, you know, I'm proud of my hometown. I want to let people know that the Eagles won the Super Bowl, stuff like that. And so I had a lot of fun doing that and was glad to be able to work there. Surprisingly easy experience. You never know when trying to get locations set up, but like we were in and out in like an hour and we got the scene done. And of course also Jess, fantastic to work with. I already mentioned, you know, Devin, but Jess too, she helped so much. She was so helpful to me as, once again, a first-time director, just finding my footing, and, you know, she just made the set so much fun. Yeah, great experience all around. Everybody in this project, I mean, I would work with all of them again. They were great people, hard workers, and yeah, just a great experience for a first-time filmmaker. Couldn't ask for anything else. That book too, by the way, I'm thinking of ending things. Shout out to that book, that story in general. I actually saw the movie first by Charlie Kaufman. Loved the movie, so I went and read the book, and they're
I
different
finally
but
had
both equally
forgotten and
great.
was
Love them both.
getting ready to go to the bank. I was picking up the kids.
Okay, well, don't forget.
Come on. How could I forget?
Love the lighting of this scene. We used very little artificial lighting other than what was already in the house, set up. We brought our own lighting and we did use it when we needed to, but so much of it was just
What?
amazing. Like, that was just the light coming through the window and it
Sorry,
backlit beautifully.
I guess I
And we
forgot.
had so much of that with like all the
We're not
windows in the house, like I mentioned.
listening.
We got so lucky with
my
so
dad
many
listens to
great
that?
shots
No,
that
no,
were
I-
lit perfectly. It just happened to be the right time of day with the right angles coming through the window in the perfect way. Yeah.
No, nothing like that. You know what?
Trying to
Don't
shoot an
even worry,
entire
okay?
feature film in 3 weeks on a shoestring budget, any and everything will go wrong. So when things go right miraculously, it really is a miracle.
You're not
It's such a fantastic
going anywhere
experience, and
tonight, are you?
I'm so grateful for it turning out as good as it did.
Anything?
No.
And you're not bringing
This
it
house,
back.
by the way, was haunted,
No, of course
which
not.
they didn't tell me until the first day of setting up and filming. But an experience where
I know, I'm fine.
there was a ghost cat for one, but also this door in particular kept opening in the middle of takes, and I actually walked up to it and I said to the door, "Please not right now," and it stopped opening and let us finish up the takes for the rest of the day. So have to say, there were ghosts, but they were friendly ghosts. So shout out to the ghosts in the Jets Fort house. They were cool. This is Liquid IV, by the way. I was not sure what I was going to use for the medicine. I bought some Liquid IV. I bought some Emergency, a couple different things to test what they looked like on camera. Turns out, though, I got really sick right before filming, so I drank like all the Emergency and a lot of the Liquid IV, so that was the only one we had left for that shot. So I was like, we got one take. Hopefully you don't choke. And I didn't. And yeah, it looks good. This shot too, I love this drone shot. We didn't have many excuses to pull out the drone, but this one was one, and it adds such a creepy layer as opposed to the first shot of Ted exiting, where we just had it on sticks. Now we've got this descending drone shot that makes it really feel like the world is collapsing, and I love that. Yeah, like I said, not many excuses to pull out the drone, so when you get one legit reason, you jump at it, and it was just so much fun. Not my car, by the way. Actually, this is my mom's car. Shout out to my mom for letting me borrow it. But so color scheming was really important to me in this movie, and my car is black, and Ted's color scheme is gray primarily, and then also blue hints, because I follow a sort of like Hitchcock color coding, where Hitchcock has different colors mean different things in his movies. Not every single one of his movies, but so typically if you see a room of guys in suits, you can tell the whole plot based on what color suit they're wearing. If they're wearing a blue suit, means they're a good guy. Black suit means you're a bad guy. Gray suit means you're morally ambiguous or unimportant to the plot. Not always, but that's the general rule of thumb. So, Ted, I want to show outwardly as blue, being a protagonist, but as the plot develops and you see him more clearly, is gray, because he's not really a good guy or a bad guy, he's just kind of there. He may be the main character, but he's not a protagonist exactly. And then same thing goes for the majority of the other characters in this movie, whether they're blue, black, or gray. It tells a lot about that character as well. Had a lot of fun with that. So my car's black. Couldn't have Ted driving a black car, so borrowed the gray car from my mom. Wonderful. It worked out perfectly. Once again, gunshots throughout this entire scene. A lot easier without any of the dialogue, but still had to mesh together a bunch of different takes to try to get audio. especially, for things that matter, like footsteps being in time and then the door shaking. You just hope that one of the takes, you've got that clean audio where a gunshot isn't happening at the same time. It's really annoying, but we got through it and it turns out okay.
Front door open.
If I'm being honest, if there was one thing I could change about this movie, it would be the dialogue in this scene. Because, when you're a first-time filmmaker, there's a lot of things that you want to try. And there's, rules that you believe are meant to be broken. And so, like, there's a rule in filmmaking that, like, you don't have people say goodbye when they hang up the phone because it's a waste of time and it breaks the rhythm of the scene. And I was like, no, but you gotta. So I forced that into this scene, saw that the timing and rhythm was awful, and then tried to take it out in editing, and I just couldn't. So yeah, if I could change anything about this movie, that's at the top of my list. I don't know how many people really hold on to that moment. They may notice it feels awkward, but not know why. But regardless, yeah, least favorite part of the movie. Absolutely hate that. That was 2 shots, by the way. As that camera pans quickly from the mirror back to his face, that was 2 different shots that I combined there with a quick blur there. And I'm proud of that edit because I think you can't really tell, and that's great. This is Palmer and Max, by the way, playing Cop 1 and 2, which is great because I had a lot of people audition, a decent amount of people, I should say, audition for the cops, but, like, I really felt like I only had 2 legit choices. Like, Palmer and Max were just head and shoulders above the competition. But, you don't know how they're going to look together on screen, and you hope they're going to be good, so I had them do, like, a Zoom call together, and I was like, immediately, yes, these guys are perfect. So, absolutely lucky, once again, so lucky to be surrounded by so many talented people in this project, all just, invested in this really cheap production trying to make something good, and I think we did, and I'm so happy because Palmer and Max have worked together multiple times since, including my follow-up feature film, and so I'm really glad that I got to be a part of them discovering each other and, kind of discovering them for this film. It's just a great discovery there. So many, like I said, so many talented people involved in this that it just felt like so many happy accidents. Speaking of sound that made things very difficult, we actually had our boom pole break like day 1, where just the thing that held the mic was broken, so it wobbled around, and this added this rumbling sound to the audio anytime the mic would move at all. And so it made editing, especially this scene, really difficult. Once again, lighting though. This lighting is just all a happy accidents, not really an accident, but just like perfect timing where it's like, it was just that time of day, it was really cloudy. It was really cloudy for most of our shooting, so it diffused the light in a perfect, beautiful way. So you've got that harsh lighting coming in from the side, but just soft enough because of the clouds that it just makes this whole scene look so good, and I'm so happy, like, how it turned out. But yeah, so the audio, though, a lot of editing. As a first-time user of Premiere Pro, I'd spent my whole life editing, YouTube videos and stuff, but it was my first time editing a feature film, and I had to learn how to edit on Premiere Pro, and God, the sound mixing, dude. Sound mixing is my worst enemy. I absolutely hate it. I despise it, but I had to learn it for this film, and I'm so glad I did have to learn it because it makes everything sound so much better, but man, it was a pain in the ass. It really was. So this scene, if you didn't already notice from the dialogue, is a reference to Rocky 2, the proposal scene between Rocky and Adrian. And so therefore it was written to be at the zoo, just like that scene was, but we couldn't get permission to film there. So we had to call an audible, and we switched to a different iconic Philly location, being, the Magic Garden. But it still remains a Rocky reference here because of the dialogue being so similar. Every flashback, in case you didn't know, is a reference to a different movie in some way or another. Also, I do want to point out that the editing isn't just a gimmick. It doesn't just look different for the sake of looking different. It does help to let you know when the flashbacks have begun that it's in the 4:3 and the coloring's different, but that does represent something from a filmmaking side as well, and is important to the plot because the 4x3 signifies that we're not getting the full picture, and then everything's also got a rose-tinted color to it. Everything's just slightly pink, and so it lets us know that these flashbacks are also being seen through rose-colored glasses. So not only are we not seeing the full picture, but what we are seeing is distorted. Because, you know, the storyteller being Ted, he's very unreliable, and so, especially in the flashbacks, we're being told basically lies. And so that was a fun, really subtle way to let the audience know that.
Something?
Yeah, I mean, just if you didn't have anything else to do.
Teddy, that is the lamest, dumbest, worst proposal I have ever heard in my entire life.
Yeah.
What was funny, too, is so this scene, chronologically, isn't the first kiss between Ted and Rachel, but it was the first one we filmed, and so it was hard to kind of like mask that, like, you know, nervous energy of the first kiss that we're filming for this movie, but it's not supposed to be nervous energy. We're supposed to have that later in the other scene, and so it was kind of funny to like film that backwards and try to make that seem more natural, and then the second go around more nervous energy. And see, once again, a little outdated now because we've won a Super Bowl since this movie has come out, which is wonderful, but had to give my hometown a shout out. This bar also, too, Coco's in Aston, is a bit of a landmark, so I wanted to film there. I know a lot of people on staff there, too, a lot of cool people there that I'm friends with. Also, obviously, had to have that MacGuffin reference in there. This guy, Connor. Another guy I've worked with for years on my YouTube channel doing movie reviews and comedy with. And he kind of jokingly asked me, so you got a role for me, right? And I was like, you know what? I trust you. You're a comedian. You're comfortable in front of the camera. I do want to give you a role. So I wrote in this role of MacGuffin as a MacGuffin. And so that's kind of why I named him that. I was like, he's important to the plot purely to keep the plot moving forward, but then also he works at a bar, so in case you don't know, AMC Theaters has a bar at some of their locations named MacGuffin, so it's kind of a double joke right there.
Bad day?
The whiskey in these scenes, by the way, is actually iced tea. So I took about 20 plus shots of iced tea for this scene. I don't remember exactly how many shots it ended up being, but it was 2 bottles of iced tea worth, which, one, makes you have to pee, but 2, I don't drink caffeine because of a heart condition, and so I wasn't aware that there was caffeine in iced tea. And granted, there's not a lot, but you drink 2 bottles in shot form, and it'll give you a little bit of jitters. It'll make your heart skip a beat. So it made the rest of the day a little uncomfortable, and it was a good lesson learned. But yeah, no, Connor's great in this. He didn't have any acting experience at all, as far as I know, before this. Just a little bit of stage stuff with like stand-up comedy, and like I said, did the YouTube stuff. But first time actually filming something serious, and I thought he did a great job. It was fun kind of directing a non-actor again, which is, you know, what I grew up doing, and then all of a sudden I'm surrounded by actual actors, and it's a whole different kind of pressure. And then it was like, all right, directing a friend who's not, you know, a professional actor anyway, and you have fun, you kind of relax a little bit, and you get some interesting performances out of it when you're willing to try new things and work together. And this shot, too, in particular, I love because Connor actually breaks character here, where he turns to look over to see, are we cutting? Are we still going? He was supposed to just stare off to the side the whole time, but that look, actually, I feel like makes the shot better. And that's why I kept it, because it doesn't look like he's breaking character. It just makes it look like he's thinking or kind of confused. And so I love that. I love that shot. This shot and the other around the house shot that we did, we decided to do all as one take, partially because we were like out of time. It was one of our last nights, if not, I think this was our last night in the house, and like, we don't have time to get this later, so we're just trying to get the night over with and done. We're all exhausted, we're all kind of mad and upset because it's been a long day, you know, been up since 6 a.m. and now it's like 3 a.m. And yeah, I don't think doing it all in one take actually made it any shorter, but it led to some cool shots that I'm glad we got. That lens flare, by the way, is CGI. That was added in not just for style points, but actually because doing this all as in one shot, you run into a couple of issues with reflections and shadows and stuff, a lot of which, you know, in post you can punch in and edit around. But going down that hallway, there was overhead lighting, so you got shadows from the camera and the mic on my back that you just couldn't do anything about. So I don't completely cover up the shadow with the lens flare, but it distracts your eye away from it, so you can see it if you're looking for it, but you're probably not going to see it because you're probably distracted. That knock also, the knock on the glass, is added in post. There is unfortunately no footage of this, but there is audio recording somewhere of me furiously knocking on a fish tank a million different ways, trying to get the urgency right, trying to get the sound just right. Pretty sure I bruised my knuckles with how much I had to knock on that tank trying to get that sound right. But yeah, ended up working well. Fun little behind the scenes imagery there, if you want to see me hunched over with a mic trying to get this banging right. Once again, love the long single shot take until we get here. We added a cut here simply so we could really get a strong visual of the door closing. But we still wanted that shot where you see in this side of the door that the door is actually closed. So that when the camera swings around and the door is open, you would know it wasn't left open by accident. That was on purpose. We shot that way on purpose. So that was fun. A little thing that, like, I kind of figured nobody would really pick up on. Turns out more people noticed it than I thought, but it's still a fun, subtle scare. Like, this movie isn't really horror, it's much more of a thriller, so the scares are much more subtle for the most part, much more psychological, and that was one of those subtle little moments where it's like, okay, that's not outright terrifying, but it just gets you nervous as an audience. This whole sequence does, and a big part of that is, you know, the work that Logan and Mitch put in to bring that vision to life, and the camera work is just so much fun, going all around the house like this, and once again, a little lens flare for continuity there. But yeah, had a lot of fun. It's one of those things that it was miserable night of, but looking back, great memories, and you know, you can't believe you get those shots because it's 1 in a million, and so you're really happy when you actually get them. Also, the amount of time I spent in bed during the shoot was ridiculous. You don't really notice stuff as a writer, but when you're acting it out, you're like, man, I wrote myself in bed a lot. So this scene, actually, I added in pretty last minute. As you can tell, like, our hair is different and stuff. We came back, we shot for like 2 weeks in March, and then we came back in, I want to say August. It was sometime in the summer, and so we had a few months of a break where I'd been editing the movie, getting ready to come back and film later. And while editing, I felt like there was something missing, like I felt like we needed one more flashback. So I sat down and I wrote this scene in about an hour. It was definitely the quickest I had written any scene at all, and we basically just went with the first draft of this scene. I don't think I made a whole lot of edits at all to it, and it honestly became, I think, my favorite scene in the whole movie, at least from a dialogue perspective. It was a lot of fun to both write and film. Just a fun, silly little scene on the surface, but also this scene, you get a lot of meaning and a lot of depth from the characters, both from the things Rachel says, but also actually the dialogue on the TV is incredibly important. Not just the obvious line with like the I forgot about her, which becomes kind of painfully obvious on a rewatch, but there's a lot of dialogue there where the counting from 1 to 3, but they never actually get to the third one. There's also, you know, the, well, why should I jump in? I'm not in love. So the whole scene has a lot of fun dialogue that's in there that, you know, wasn't in the script. That was something that came up while editing because I needed a royalty-free, a copyright-free movie to put in here. And I defaulted to this movie because it was one that I grew up watching and I love and quoted a bunch with family. The whole scene of, like, who's Georgette was something we used to quote a lot. And I just thought that would be perfect for the scene. But as you're editing it, you realize how much of this dialogue can be important. So you sneak that in there and see if anybody notices. And so, yeah, don't want to give away all the trade secrets or whatever to this movie, but There's a lot of fun stuff in here that's pretty sneaky, and so I enjoy that. And like I said, this was such a fun shoot, just really easy, really smooth. All of these flashbacks, you know, with the different hair, we filmed in 2 separate days, all in one day, except for the when we had to drive out to the Montauk, or technically Wainscott, the beach in New York. That was its own separate day just because it was a long drive. It's like 3-4 hours each way. So just one scene that day, but then the rest all in one day. And a lot of fun, easy stuff. Kind of just, you know, the rom-com bits, which were the most lighthearted and easy to film stuff in the whole movie. You're not worried about trying to be scary or intimidating or getting it just right. You're just like, all right, we're kind of banking on the chemistry of the 2 characters and the dialogue, and I think those ended up being most people's favorite scenes in the movie. So sometimes the most fun stuff to film actually is the best stuff.
A miracle has happened, where I've completely forgotten.
Also, shout out to Flying Deuces. Great movie.
Who's Georgette? Gee, that's swell. Now we can finish the washing and we can go home. Finish nothing. We're going now.
That mark on my elbow, by the way, adds a little context to when exactly we filmed this, because if you've seen the movie before, you know I fell down trying to escape from Strange Woman, and I did a bunch of takes of that, and bruised the shit out of my elbow. So even though this was a couple days later, you still have that mark there, and I find that hilarious. But also, not that it was written that way or anything, but it can be a way of knowing that this is out of order, because why does he have a bruise on his elbow? He didn't have one when he was going to bed or anything. Oh, it's because it's not in order. This is a non-linear story. By the way, all of the audio of Ted walking around in this scene had to be faked. The first time we walked around, it was pretty easy. I was wearing those dress shoes, so they're pretty loud. But being barefoot in this scene, it was hard to have audio that wasn't just, you know, Mitch walking around with the camera, because he's closer to the mic than I am. So you pick up his footsteps just as much, if not more, than mine. So I had to go through and put all of the footsteps back in with ADR. So that was frustrating. But once again, it's little things like that nobody really notices unless you point it out. I think it turned out okay. What the fuck? Hey! That line too was dubbed in. Not my proudest dub, but you get what you get. That shot too, I think most people have reported that being like the creepiest moment for them, which is fun because that wasn't a shot that was really planned out that much. We had a different shot in mind and we couldn't make it work, so we just went with that, and that's what we got. And we weren't super proud of it, I don't think, in the moment, but like I said, it turned out to be one of the more memorable shots in the movie for us, and I'm really proud of that. You know, sometimes it's the happy accidents that are most memorable. I love this shot too, by the way. Having Skinner, just his silhouette there, it's just it's such a cool little shot. This was my own little reference to Star Wars, The Empire Strikes Back, actually, which nobody would ever get, but just that breathing, just hearing the breathing was like a little reference to Darth Vader that I wanted to sneak in there, something that had kind of been ingrained in my head since childhood. And not that it's like a reference anybody would ever get, but like I said, that's one of the references that's just for me. Speaking of references that are just for me, I would say the motel stuff is that as well, because the motel, the whole reason I want to do these shots in a motel and have the Bible there too, that was a reference to Memento. You know, to have the Bible there in one shot and then replace it with something else when you're expecting the Bible in a later shot. A lot of references to my favorite filmmakers in here, you know, from Nolan to Tarantino, Chaplin, Orson Welles, a lot of different filmmakers. Scorsese referenced a bunch. I went into this movie not knowing if I was ever going to make a second one, so you try to throw everything at the wall a little bit and just like get it all out of your system. And there's so many great filmmakers and films that I wanted to pay homage to, because I was like, this is a passion project. and I'm so grateful I get to do it. May not ever have another chance to do it. So I want to let you know I appreciate all the people who have done it before me, who have done it better than me and better than I ever could do it. So, yeah, sorry for all the references. I tried to make them, for the most part, subtle, so it wouldn't distract too much from the film, but it would be something that I could, you know, smile at when I look back at it years later.
Using your fingers, separate the skin from the flesh. The last two bones are usually retained, but things that you flesh off. And we'll sew the mouth shut from the inside of the skin. Start in the middle, working our way out to either side. So, preserve that wonderful, wonderful smile.
Back in bed, like I said. Ted's in bed a lot. And it was great because, like I said, I was very tired. So I'm pretty sure there was a couple of times where, you know, I was in bed waiting for Mitch and Logan to get set up. And I probably took a couple of cat naps there. And I needed them. I needed all the energy I could get. You can hear, honestly, in my voice in several scenes, especially the dialogue about to come up, where I'm like, I am so sick. Like, I can't breathe. I'm struggling to get words out. And I sound terrible, but it worked, honestly, for the scene because Ted is, you know, extremely stressed and, you know, he's struggling and groggy and just woke up. So having that kind of groggy first words of the day voice turned out okay, and I don't mind that. But yeah, I was sick and I was struggling.
Hello?
Ted?
Hi.
Yeah, it's me, Teddy. How you holding up?
On Mitch? Not great.
This insert shot, by the way, going back to the stink bug from earlier, wasn't an artistic choice up front. We actually forgot to get one of my lines. But luckily, when we were recording Mac's dialogue, I was reciting the dialogue with him. So I had audio of me saying that one line, but we just didn't have any video of me saying that line. So I just spliced it in the middle there. In between these two scenes, these two different shots, one in the kitchen, one in the bedroom, and made it work. And you don't really notice it, but like, such an oversight. That's the problem. Like I said, you're trying to film everything in just a couple of weeks with no budget. You have a couple of not so happy accidents, and that was one of them. But luckily, you know, when you're forced to be creative, you are creative. So we had a lot of cool moments that we got to out of necessity. Like that moment, by the way. My knees cracked really loud. You just gotta edit that out. Because, yeah, I mean, sure, is it accurate? Would an old man's knees crack? Yes.
What was that?
They would. A young man's would, like mine.
I just heard
But it would be distracting. It's a little too comedic, so had to take that out. A lot of ankles and knees cracking throughout this movie that had to get rid of. Like I mentioned, by the way, so this basement is not attached to this house at all. Completely different building entirely, but it was just a very cinematic basement that I wanted to use. It looked great for the shots. Audio was a little frustrating to work with the echo and all, but I think it ended up okay. The house that we filmed the bulk of the stuff at the basement was not accessible to us, so we filmed this completely separately. This is another one of those shots that I had in my head when I wrote the script, but luckily, this was not a case where Mitch and I fought over it at all. There's actually several instances where he and I would both say the same thing at the same time, and I had a lot of fun, like, knowing that, well, then this is a good idea, because we both thought it in the exact same way, and we both set it up in the exact same way. So, great shot there. Love that shot, and I'm really happy we got it exactly how we both wanted. Also, with the editing, I had a lot of fun. Like I said, it was my first time editing a feature film, so I was messing around with a lot of ideas that I'd never done before, like the cool and the warming of the different shots. So as he's confused and scared, it's cold, and then it warms up because, oh, Rachel's back. But then as she confuses him and it worries him, it becomes colder again. So I had a lot of fun shifting back and forth with stuff like that, and contrast and saturation and all of that. It was just such
I
a,
don't even know how the
like I said, a fun learning experience for me, never having edited on Premiere Pro before and having only done, really, for the most part, YouTube videos and unserious stuff. So it was a lot of fun to kind of figure that out in the editing room in a way I'd never had to do before. This was also a fun kind of experiment for me where I actually didn't give most people involved in this film the full script. Only Logan, Mitch, Devin, and Lindsay had the entire script. Everybody else only had segments. And so for Jess, she had a large portion of the script, but I wanted to not distract her from the fact that she believed that she was Ted's wife and that the whole thing was a dream and all of that. I didn't want her distracted by any outside noise. And so during that scene, trying to direct her without giving her spoilers of like, you need to act like he just called you the wrong name without telling her that. But honestly, I just ended up telling her that and saying like, I don't know, just act like this. And it was funny. I'm glad that people trusted me because it was probably a frustrating process for some of those actors. There's a hidden Wilhelm scream in there, by the way, when everybody cheers for the cake. So Wilhelm scream in there, which is great because I want to try and sneak a Wilhelm into every movie I make. And so that was a fun little thing to do right there, because it's like, how do you possibly sneak a Wilhelm scream, one of the funniest sounds in Hollywood history, into a very self-serious thriller drama? Well, you hide it. You have to hide it. So that's what I did, and it's very subtle, but if you know it's there, you can hear it. So next time you watch it, listen for it, and you'll be able to hear it. This was another nightmare sequence where we just forgot to film something. We never got the reverse angle for Jess there. So we had to just pick the best take of me, of Ted, and use that. And then we could splice Rachel's audio because we never see her face, really. But, yeah, there was supposed to be a reverse shot there, and we never got it. This day in general was the hardest day of filming, where we started filming certain scenes, like this scene in the bathroom, and the scene later out on the porch with the cop, first before all the party guests showed up. But it took too long to film the party, so it became night, and so then these scenes that we had filmed earlier in the day now had to be reshot, so we turned right around and shot them again. So actually, Lindsay's scene here, if you look at her angle in the mirror reflection, you can barely see that there is daylight coming in through the window. So we kept her shots the same because they were good and they were fine how they were, but my shots had to be completely redone because you can clearly see the windows behind me, and it was daytime before, now it's nighttime. And then of course we had to completely redo the porch scene with the cop because it had to be nighttime. So yeah, that was, like I said, this was the last day of filming, and it was exhausting. Like I said, being up since like 6 a.m. and I don't think I was in bed until about 3 a.m. Most exhausting day by far of filming. Just very frustrating. Tensions were high, but we got through it. Like I said, really proud of the people I worked with. Very talented people, very patient people, and we got through it and we got it done. And you would never know. It was the most miserable day of all of our lives. But yeah, shout out to Lindsay, shout out to Max, because I know how difficult it is to do something and feel like you did it well, feel like you got it done perfectly, and then have to turn around and try to recreate it or redo it. And obviously for Logan and Mitch, that's tough, you know, as a cameraman and sound guy, but especially for actors, it's like there's so much pressure on not trying to do it exactly the same, but still try and recapture the magic. It's a whole mess. And so I'm glad everybody was able to keep their composure and, you know, turn around and do it again and do it just as well, if not better than before. So yeah, shout out to Max, shout out to Lindsay. You guys rock.
My God, do you understand English, retard? Get your ass back inside or I'll put it there myself.
Shiloh's here?
So shout out to Carmen. So Carmen, also not an actor. He's a buddy of mine, a friend of mine who I asked him last minute, I think day of, like, hey, you want to do this role for me? And he said, hell yeah, and he jumped right into it and absolutely nailed it, hit it out of the park. And very luckily for me, happened to just wear a Selena shirt, which the Selena thing was really important to the plot and kept coming up, but he had no idea. He wasn't given any script except for this one page of dialogue, and happened to just be wearing the Selena shirt. And like I said, it just was perfect for the movie. So happy with these happy little accidents. And yeah, shout out to Carmen because, like I said, just showed up and nailed it without any practice, any rehearsal. It was awesome. So shout out to him. I love this shot too. Just like, it's like Skinner's so aggressive that the camera isn't even ready for him, and so it's like in and out of focus. And I doubt that, like, in a perfect world, Mitch would have wanted that, but it ended up looking perfect. Whether he planned it or not, I'm not sure if he did.
Oh no, that won't be necessary. Teddy here just needs.
And that look too, by the way, by Palmer. I love the subtlety in these people's performances. It's like, you're working with these actors and you can't believe how talented they are, because we were all just a bunch of nobodies, and some of us have done better for ourselves since then and everything, but like, at the time, none of us had done really anything except some commercials and stuff. Logan and Mitch had done some stuff on like Hulu or Netflix, but like, we were nobodies, and it was amazing how much talent was in a room on any given day. Couldn't have asked for a better group of people. Everybody was so awesome. This definitely is the most complained about scene. Anytime I've watched this movie with anybody, they're always like, why is the ringing so loud? When is it going to stop? And I'm like, I've made it quieter every edit, and people still complain about it. It's just an annoying pitch that I don't think anybody would ever be happy with. But yeah, so back to these flashbacks.
Hello?
It's funny with these flashbacks, I forgot to mention, I had quite the circumstance happen. Obviously we had these dates set up months in advance, and we're getting ready to film, and like 3 days or so before we picked back up and did these 2 days of filming, I was out for a walk late at night, because I do a lot of my walking at night, and that's when I also think as well, and so I'm like mentally preparing for these shoots, and I'm out for a walk and I see something move around in front of me, and I'm like, what is that? And I look down, and as I look down, a tail lifts up and it's being sprayed by a skunk. And luckily, I put out my hand and I blocked most of the spray with my hand, but it was all over my clothes. Had to throw out my shirt, had to throw out my shorts, and I personally, because I was sprayed too, smelled like a skunk. So I texted Jez about it. I was like, I hope for your sake, and my sake too, I don't smell like a skunk, but I may by the time we film this. But luckily 3 days was just like the exact perfect amount of time, or however long it ended up being, that I didn't smell like a skunk, which was good, because if she had to kiss a skunk smelling guy, this scene may not have looked quite the same.
I enjoy getting to know you, and I want to keep getting to know you.
This scene turned out great. I love this scene. I think the soundtrack is perfect here too. I had written this scene for a completely different song, a much more famous song that was a little too expensive, frankly. The budget of this film was like $25,000, and they were asking for, I think it was $20,000 for the rights to the song, and that was just obviously not, we weren't prepared to double our budget just for that song. So I found this guy online on some random website for getting rights to stuff, and he was so happy and so friendly and so willing to work with us and gave us a great deal. So shout out to him too, Anthony Lazaro. Great song, I love it. It also, I think, fit the scene better than the original song anyway, and there's some subtlety in those lyrics too, that it's not just about kissing, it's like about it being the last time before we never see each other, and that line right there of before I forget. So once again, happy accidents, because that's not how the scene was written, but that's how the scene came out. And yeah, this movie just was such a benefit from so many great people and great moments that weren't entirely planned for. So absolutely no complaints there. Great song, great moment. Another one of my favorite scenes in the movie. That shot, too, was actually a late addition. I think that shot didn't exist in any of the festival cuts. I think I added that back in right before I started pushing it for streaming, because I just love that shot where I threw it in reverse, obviously, but that was just me as Ted screaming underwater, and it was something that just didn't fit. Like, it was a cool idea in the moment, like, oh, this will be a great shot, but it didn't fit the scene, the timing of the scene. Having him pop out of the bath didn't require or allow for a screaming shot. But then, you know, having one of those reversed shots in between, you know, all of these flashbacks and then the motel shots, I was like, I need one more here. Oh, I've got a great idea. Throw that in reverse and put it in there, and it's a great shot. It looks so good. But yeah, so like I said, this is kind of the follow-up to that Memento reference. And then yeah, that throwing up in the trash can, I had to record that separately, the audio separately, because the live audio just didn't sound great. So I set up the mic, a trash can, and grabbed a bottle of water and fake vomited about 30 times until my throat was raw. Not my favorite recording day, but the audio turned out okay. And yeah, so here we are in Wainscot, which doubles as Montauk for us. Which, yeah, that's the same house you can see back there from Eternal Sunshine of the Spotless Mind, which is personally my favorite movie. I love that movie, and so when we had an opportunity, I knew we were going to film at a beach that was supposed to be far away from home. I chose this one. Even though we could have really filmed at a million different beaches that were closer, I was like, yeah, but I want to have fun with this. Like I said, I'm making this movie. It may be the only movie I ever make. Turns out that's not true, but that's how I approached it. So I was like, I'm going to go all out. So sure, I'm wasting kind of 2 days on this travel, going there 2 separate times because I had to have the 2 different haircuts for it, so we couldn't film it the same day, unfortunately. But yeah, I'm so glad I did it, because it was a little choice that cost me extra money, but, you know, those little things are what make the movie feel special to me. Devin is just such a fucking powerhouse in this movie. She's so good. She's so great. Where, like, she delivers such this beautiful performance, and she was always doing it on, like, the first or second take. And this shot in particular, just, like, the little head tilt, it was such a fun thing. A fun moment where her whole performance is so nuanced and so hard, because, like, you have to have her deliver a performance that is both creepy on a first viewing, and then also, like, you feel sorry for her on every subsequent viewing. Shout out to Tarantino, by the way. It's funny, like, we made jokes every time we had a shot of feet in this movie, but there weren't any for, like, the first 40 minutes of this movie, and then randomly for the last 20, 30 minutes, there's so many. It just comes out of nowhere, and they don't stop, and that's the first of them. I love it, because it's just like I said, we call it the Tarantino shots, but we had fun filming it. But yeah, shout out to Devin, though. Oh, look, more feet.
I'm allergic to everything.
I only ever had one. I don't think my parents liked the idea of an animal running around their house.
What changed your minds?
Nothing, really. They were kind of just forced into it.
What do you mean?
Well, this one night there was a really bad storm and the wind blew open the front door, so I ran over to close
It's funny,
it.
I talk about how easy these scenes during the flashbacks were to film, but this was the one exception. I don't know what it was. I think Jess and I spent most of our time rehearsing every scene but this one. And also, I'll admit, the dialogue in the scene's a bit rough compared to most of the dialogue, but we really struggled with this scene. And then in turn, that made the editing process suck too. But, scene turned out okay. I think, right from this moment on, the scene gets a lot better. But yeah, that opening part, we really struggled with for some reason. I also want to point out, by the way, of all the movie references in this movie, everybody always goes, oh, see The Notebook for this scene, which, ironically, you can take it that way, but this scene was actually written based off of a personal experience of mine, where a girl and I were out before we were really dating, and we were just walking and talking, and then she goes, hey, let's lay down in the middle of the road. And so we did, and then somebody called the cops on us, and we got in trouble, and he goes, what, are you dating? And we kind of looked at each other like, no, maybe, are we? You know, like, it was still too early for us to admit feelings for each other, but it was such a funny experience that I was like, this just feels like a scripted moment that I have to add into some movie sometime. And so, yeah, it fit perfectly for this story. So, yeah, it works as a Notebook reference, and I don't mind it being considered that, but honestly, no, it's actually just a reference to my own childhood.
What the hell do you kids think you're doing? Come on, get off the street, over there on the curb.
This may be, if not that other scene, this is probably my favorite dialogue in the whole movie. And the sequence of jokes definitely got the most laughs every time I showed it anywhere.
No,
It was my idea, actually, and this is our first date.
It is?
And he is trying to get in my pants.
I am.
And it was going really well until you showed up.
It was?
Yeah, love that. Also love this shot, by the way. The flashing lights, backlighting him. It looks so good. Once again, you know, like, not that that wasn't, like, set up by my cameraman, but it's like, we didn't set out to have, oh, like, we'll use the lights as backlighting. It was just like, oh, look, the lights make a really good backlighting here. This is a good shot, let's work with it. And so props to my cameraman for noticing when things look good, and props to fate, I guess, kind of guiding our hands in certain situations. Just, so many cool things. Even seeing the reflection of the lights off of, like, our faces, too. Just some cool stuff. This, kind of rundown abandoned greenhouse, too. This is actually outside of the house that we filmed the basement scenes at. And I just, you know, every day I was pulling up to this house looking at that, going like, we need to film something there. So this was another late addition to the script where I was like, we just need to show a moment of Ted having some sort of, like, clarity moment, but also just, like, it looks cool. So combine those two ideas, and I know all these other shots, like I mentioned, were in reverse. We couldn't put that in reverse, so I added that little single frame there of it being upside down to kind of complete that motif, but still different. But yeah, so it kind of try to make it feel the same, but also still being different. It's fun filming these scenes at the motel, by the way, because we had people shouting at us from the parking lot thinking we were filming a porno, which, you know, when you've got two guys in scrubs grabbing another guy in his pajamas and throwing him into a bathtub, it's kind of hard to tell them, no, we're not, because it kind of feels like we were. Another great shot, by the way. The light being diffused once again by the clouds, but also by those, like, sheer curtains. So many great moments. So many great moments that you're just so happy that you're, once again, being guided both by talent of the people around you, but also just seemingly like fate was just on our side at times.
What the fuck?
Yo, it's Mac.
Yo, Mac.
I'm unavailable at the moment. Leave me a message and I'll get back to you.
At the tone, please record your message.
Listen, Mac, you have to call me back. I can't get out and she's going to kill me.
Just like she killed me.
Feet, by the way. Had a lot of fun with this shot too. The very clear like break in like reality here, where we hadn't really gotten anything this extreme. Like obviously the transportation from one bathtub to another was like weird and like what's going on there, but now we literally just watched Ted walk through some invisible portal from one location to another. And so yeah, I really wanted to kind of convey three different emotions throughout this film, whether it was the fear of the thriller elements, or like the nostalgia of the rom-com bits, or also just the confusion. And yeah, so as long as anybody feels one of those three emotions, I feel like I succeeded, and the confusion's really ramping up during this scenes, where it's a bit of a risk, because it's either where audiences kind of lock in trying to figure out like what the hell is going on, feet, by the way, or they kind of tap out. So it's kind of just like a moment of truth moment where you're finding out if people are really going to be invested in the story or not. Also, I hate nobody pointing out to me that my collar was messed up in these shots, but Oh well, it is now, and it's just part of the story now.
You're just seeing her because you want to see her.
Yeah, maybe, but then why would she tell me about the woman that's trying to kill me?
I don't know, but we can worry about the why later. The most important thing is that you have to get out of there now.
I can't leave yet.
What? Why the fuck not?
It's funny, we put a lot of effort, or I should say I put a lot of effort into doing all this dialogue in one take. We had a master shot where I did the whole thing in one take, all the dialogue. We also obviously had these multiple camera angles that we filmed separately and could break up individually, but I did the whole thing in one take thinking that would be a really cool shot to have. But the timing of it didn't line up with Mac's dialogue. His dialogue took too long and took up too much time. I didn't leave long enough pauses. And so it was all for nothing. And I was like, oh, this is a really cool acting moment for me. I'm proving my chops as an actor. And then I didn't leave enough time for him, so I ruined that actually. So, oh well. So much for my great acting moment.
What proof?
Her body, Ted. You find Rachel, you get your proof.
She could be anywhere, Mac. How am I supposed to just find her body?
Did you ever open that trunk in the basement?
So here we are on our final shot. This was the final thing we filmed of the entire movie. Obviously went back and recorded some audio, some ADR and stuff, but as far as actually going out as cast and crew and filming, this was the last thing we filmed the entire shoot, and it was really going well. It went a little too well because we actually felt so confident in it that we only got one take of each reverse, which as an editor I cursed myself for later because no matter how good the takes seem, you're always going to wish you had more coverage when you go to edit it. And sure enough, I didn't have enough coverage, and so editing for this scene really was difficult. But it turned out okay. It just took a lot longer than it should have. Cool thing I want to point out, though, by the way, that opening shot was not something we planned for. Mitch was just setting up the camera, he had the tripod set up, was getting everything in focus and looking good. And so I was sitting where I was going to be sitting just so we could get that shot. And then once he was like, all right, set up, action, Jess started walking over. But it was a really cool idea for an establishing shot. So what I did was, even though she was walking there, I just took part of the beach where she hadn't walked on yet and layered it over her. And so there was nobody around Ted for that establishing shot. And then all of a sudden she's there. So it ended up being like a cool establishing shot that never actually really existed. It's just a fun thing that you make from nothing in the editing process, which is a lot of fun.
Take off your shirt now.
Who even are you? Where did you come from?
I'm with the group from school. I'm a freshman. We are.
Nobody actually does that.
I'm Rachel.
Hi.
And you are?
Ted.
I am really glad,
Aw, Teddy,
like I said,
that's
I
so
know
cool.
I'm repeating myself, but
Nobody calls me
being
that.
able to shoot out front of this house was such a great experience, and I'm so glad we did it. It elevates it so much for me. I know it's just a small little thing that the average, watcher of this film is not going to pick up on, but it's something, like I said, that means a lot to me, and I'm glad we did it, even though it was a pain in the butt to, drive out there 2 separate times just for these 2 different scenes.
And I think most girls wouldn't be impressed by the guy they never noticed because he sat far away from everyone else and never said a word to anyone about anything. Think about it, Teddy.
Don't call me that.
Well, Ted,
This was the scene I actually used. The dialogue of this scene was what I used for the auditions, and that's when I knew immediately Jess was perfect for this role, because she delivered that line in particular better than anybody else did, and I absolutely loved it. I was like, yep, she's the one. And she submitted her audition late. She was late. I was like days away from casting somebody else, just kind of like holding out hope somebody else would submit, and then she finally did a few days late, and I went, hell yes, I found Rachel, here she is, and my god, did I find her. Just completely made the character her own, made this movie so much better than it would have been with literally anybody else in this role. So shout out to Jess, she was a godsend, she was so good. Won Best Actress, by the way, at Austin Revolution Film Festival, so shout out to her, shout out to Austin Revolution Film Festival. So this trunk, I got this off of Amazon, And trust me when I say it was not supposed to leak blood everywhere, but it did. I had taped up the entirety of the insides with packaging tape, thinking that I had waterproofed it, but I guess I didn't. And so we got a whole different visual than I was expecting, having the blood everywhere, but it turned out okay. That head, by the way, I didn't really have to act. That head was disgusting. I don't know what they used for the hair, whether it was like horse hair or what they used, but it smelled terrible, especially once it got wet. So any disgusting reaction I had, it wasn't faked. It was pretty real. This was one of my favorite ideas coming into this scene too, though, of like filming this whole bit pre-trunk, so there's no blood anywhere, and then going back and filming it again post-blood. It was just a lot of fun to then intermingle the takes through editing and kind of like fuck with the audience with like, did I see that or did I miss something? What's going on? Just a lot of fun. And I love the visual too of like the bloody hands just look so good. And later having the blood get wiped on my face, so then feet, by the way. If you somehow were missing that the blood was disappearing and coming back, now you definitely can't. Just, it's great. I love it.
Teddy, please give it to me. Max is still there. Give me the fucking toy, Ted!
What are you talking about?
That stupid fucking baby toy you've been running around playing make-believe with, Ted. Just give it to me, alright?
It's my phone.
Are you sure about that?
Love that shot. One of my favorite shots in the movie, and it was an idea, once again, that like Mitch and I both came up with at the same time. Like, this would look great. And took us a couple takes to get it right, but it looks so good. I'm so glad we got it. Continuity! My shirt's tucked in, because we actually forgot to get that shot day of. Had to come back to this house solely to get that shot. So that was a pain in the butt, but we got it.
Absolutely nothing, Teddy.
Devin's so fucking good, by the way. I cannot say enough good things about her. I could talk all day about how great she is, and I still wouldn't be doing her service. Like, she's so good. Like I said, her performance has to be read multiple different ways, and it really works both ways. So good. I will also say, by the way, that blood was a pain in the ass to clean up. I went to, like, a dollar store to get a mop to try to clean it up, but the mop sucked. So what I ended up doing was just getting a bucket and some towels, slapping down the towels, wringing them out into the bucket, rinse and repeat about 50,000 times. And so we were done filming pretty early. It was probably like 10 at the latest. And then we were going to film again early next morning, like 9 a.m., 10 a.m. or something like that. So everybody went to bed at a reasonable hour and woke up ready to go the next day, except for me, because I was up until like 3 a.m. cleaning this basement floor. But you know what? It's one of my favorite memories from making the movie. That and exiting the house late at night with bloody sheets from being stabbed in bed. Those are two of my favorite memories. But yeah, just, you know, feeling like I was earning it. Like, we're doing everything ourselves, we're making this movie ourselves, and we're earning it. That is a great memory to me. I love these shots too. Just having Devin trail along with us for these scenes just to have these one takes. But it was great. I just love the visual there. Like I said, when you want something good, you're willing to spend a little extra time, a little extra money to get something good. By the way, none of us had filmed any action sequences before. I'd never done an action sequence. Devin never had. Logan and Mitch hadn't. So this was all kind of our first stab at this. And I think it looks great. It turned out really good.
Why couldn't you just forget about her?
So this shot here
Why couldn't you just love me instead?
was the only take we did. I think we had one other angle of this dialogue, but that was it. Devin just ripped this line. And honestly, she delivered it differently than I had, like, heard it in my head. And so part of you as a director wants to change it, but, like, once I heard her say it, I was like, that is the best thing I've ever heard in my life. If you watch the behind the scenes, she says a line, there's like a pause, and then all of us just go, yeah, we got it. And that is forever, always will be my favorite line delivery in this movie. I just am in awe every time I watch it. Like, it makes you want to cry. It brings out every emotion possible because Devin is just so goddamn good And that line, like, you know, I was proud of how that dialogue was written when I wrote it, but then you hear her say it and it becomes a million times better. And yeah, it's my favorite part of the movie every time I watch it from like a serious, yeah, there's some cute, funny stuff, but like on a serious level, that is the best thing in this movie, I think. And it's all because Devin is just that fucking awesome. So once again, shout out Devin. She's good at what she does. So yeah, here we are again with the B-roll. Once again, like I said, to kind of wrap it up and let us know time is a loop. This is non-linear. Don't trust what you're seeing. Also, that picture in the back you see out of focus is an old man and a woman, and so it's like that could be Ted and his wife. Now that we are about to know that he's actually old. This was the second scene we filmed following my overacting, like I mentioned at the beginning of the movie. So just to be able to kind of like tear up on command and like have a much more emotional, serious scene kind of saved my reputation a little bit with the guys. And yeah, this was a fun scene to film too, because like this also gave me confidence as an actor, going from that first scene where it felt like we couldn't really get anything quite right to this one where I was like, okay, now we're hitting our stride and we're getting it, and we're starting to have a little bit of fun and not worrying so much about it. So I also wrote this in here too because I just hate dumb cop-out endings in movies. So this movie's intended to be scary. Like I said, that's one of the 3 emotions I wanted to create was fear. And so this was one last jab of fear at you, not about the plot necessarily, but as a viewer that you were just tricked by me into watching a bad movie. So I wanted to sneak that in as one little thing, last little thing to get you afraid that you had just wasted an hour of your life watching a shitty movie with a dumb twist ending, just to then pull the rug out from underneath you again with the actual twist ending, the actual reveal that he was in a nursing home. This whole movie's been a lie, essentially. So, yeah, had a lot of fun filming this movie, and, you know, once again, everybody involved was so talented and such a pleasure to work with. Even this scene, you know, there's no dialogue, but, like, everybody was so excited and ready to be a part of something, and, you know, a lot of these people even came to, like, the screener later that I had for friends and family and stuff, because they were just like, I don't know exactly what was going on, because literally all we knew was we were playing people in a nursing home, but like we're excited to see what it's about. So yeah, just a lot of fun, and I'm so glad that I got to do this, and so glad that people are actually watching it and enjoying it. There you go. Written, directed by Simon Stockdale. During the first version of this movie that I showed at that Friends and Family screener, there was no uptick in that audio, like that whirring from the air conditioner, and then there was no sound at all during the credits here. I added some beach ambience, and so people actually just waited in silence, thinking that something else was going to happen. And so what I did to rectify that was I said, like, I amplified that air conditioner sound, and then I put in this ambience here, because I didn't want to put in score. I had made that decision fairly early on that I was like, I want there to just be silence, time for reflection. But I thought the ambience wasn't a bad choice either, so just to let the audience know once and for all, this is over, the movie ended, don't wait around. You can turn the movie off or do whatever you want to do, but the movie is over. Shout out to Kayla Hughes, by the way, party guest who never showed up. Thanks for everything. But yeah, shout out to everybody. You know, all of the cast crew, even the party extras and the patients and everybody involved, being excited to work on this movie every day. Logan and Mitch, they actually worked for, under their typical budget. They worked for cheaper just because they were excited for the project, and I really am so happy to get to work with people excited for it. They're not to say people weren't talented, but I would rather have people that are excited and wanting to make something special than people that are talented. Luckily, I had both, but yeah, it just means so much to have people invested in the movie and the process of it. Shout out to Ricky, wonderful score. He was a friend from college that kind of reconnected with through social media after the fact. Also was in there at a certain point, but Dan Shabazian and his brother were involved. Dan was the photographer. He actually helped with a couple of things on set too. But another friend, he was on my YouTube channel a couple times. But yeah, it's cool to include as many friends and people like that as you can into this project, because yeah, once again, just having people that are passionate about making something makes a world of difference. Shout out to all of them. Shout out to the donors. Couldn't have done it without you. Yeah, this movie was much more expensive than I planned for it to be. It was supposed to be $10,000, ended up being $25,000. So that's filmmaking, baby. And then, like I said, it is in there as well. But thank you again to Devin being the first person to sign on. Was such a vote of confidence that I needed. I was terrified trying to get this movie off the ground as a nobody. Nobody knew who I was. Nobody had any idea what I was doing. I didn't know what I was doing. So to have Devin kind of set the tone first and be the first person to sign on meant the world to me. Here we finally have the post-credit scene moment. It's more of a sound than a scene, but having the scratching once again ties together the beginning of the movie to the end of the movie by having the same sound both start the movie and end the movie, once again making it non-linear and kind of hammering that home. I also, having post-credit scenes was always something important to me ever since I was a kid. Unfortunately, it's become a lot tackier and overdone in recent years, so I want to both do a post-credit scene and not do a post-credit scene, because I promised myself ever since I was a kid that I would always do that, but also do it in a way that it would not be tacky. I'm going over here. I'm talking too long, so I'm just going to try and wrap it up here and say thank you for everybody watching. This was a great experience. Thank you to everybody that was involved in making of the movie. Also the donors, also everybody that's bought the movie and watched the movie. You guys all rock. Thank you so much. It's genuinely helped make my dreams come true. Love you all. Thank you.